and welcome to the Spiritual and Empowerment Living with Tia podcast, a sacred place and resource for spiritually centered women who want to go from the mundane to the magical life, for overcoming fear and doubt, reconnecting with the goddess, understanding messages from spirit, and uncovering your spiritual gifts so you can finally live the life you deserve. Hello and welcome, Spiritual Trailblazers. I'm so excited to introduce you to our lovely guest today. And the topic I know is going to be beneficial on so many levels. And it's definitely going to bring up a few things that you probably didn't realize needed to be addressed. So I have Flora Ware, a paradigm shifter, dream igniter, and goddess guide. She serves a global community of women through her online business as a Temple Priestess, sacred business coach, and leader mentor. Flora specializes in archetypical, spiritual, and embodiment, helping women hear their soul's voice, awaken the goddess within, and align their life and work with their unique feminine power. Flora is deeply connected to her Celtic ancestral roots, having been on the path as a practicing witch since her first full moon women's circle in 1993. She lives in Vernon, British Columbia, Canada, with her wife and young wizard in training. You can visit her at strengthandsoul.com, and I was just taking her course, so I can't wait to see which goddess I am. She has a lovely quiz there, so make sure you check her out. And the link for her website will be in the description of this episode. Flora, welcome.
Aw, thank you so much, Tia. I'm really looking forward to this conversation.
Oh, me too. And I'm so glad that we connected. I know we connected in the past. I absolutely adore your work. And I'm so thrilled to dive into this because as I'm rediscovering my witchy roots and all that jazz, some feelings definitely arise. So I'm very interested in understanding the witch wound and around and learning more about it. And I apologize. I mentioned this before on the podcast with my brackets and my teeth. So there's going to be a little bit of speech going on there, but you guys know what I'm saying.
All good, all good.
So what can you explain what that is for us and how we can identify that in our life?
Yeah. The witch wound is the fear of being found out, the fear of persecution, that you might have some spiritual gifts or some, wisdom or understanding that other people probably judge as being wrong, as being evil. Right. And so this witch wound is part of our collective unconsciousness. And this is where it comes into the psychological side, like Carl Jung, who really spoke into our collective unconscious. It's something that's been passed down through the generations from the burning times, from the era of the witch trials, where women, there was also men, but it was primarily a genocide against women, and in particular the herbalists, the midwives, and any woman that had oracular gifts, divination gifts, that we had to hide. We were turned in by our friends, even our families. Oftentimes, entire villages and towns would be, like just total genocide against women and the feminine gifts. So this is a painful history that's been passed down, and today it's still prevalent in our unconsciousness, this fear of harm and of persecution.
When you said that, I literally said, and I had to press mute on my end because you're blowing me away. I posted yesterday on Instagram about how I've been feeling, and then the overall feelings I've been getting. And one of it was like the fear of basically being found out, discovered, like, oh my gosh, she's not, this, she's the, and the other thing that came to mind was the genocide. For so long, for almost as long as I can remember, I always felt like I needed to have easy access to my cash. Like I needed the cash because in case I need to go, in case I need to leave the country,
Mhm.
and it was so crazy. Even before I learned I needed a passport, I'm just like, I need to have this money with me. I can't spend it in certain places because what if I need to get up and go? What if I need to leave? And oh my gosh, I really believe now that this is a little bit tapping into the past life as well. And like you said, that collective unconscious, that feeling that arises the more we dive into our especially our witchy aspect, it's really something to think about. I appreciate you saying that.
Yeah. Oh, that's a great example for yourself of, um, this feeling, this kind of like an anxiousness or a fear that
Hmm.
you didn't even necessarily understand. Like, why do I feel like I need to have, quick money on hand in case I need to escape something? And that's fascinating.
Right. So I guess it was like pieces of silver or gold back then to have on me.
Right. Yeah.
Oh, that's pretty awesome. So if someone is feeling those ways, is there a process that can help them to understand? Because I know there are some people who are awakening to their witch aspect, and I didn't start off with the word witch. I started off with angels, and then goddesses, and then goddess Hecate, as we talked about in your lovely summit you had not too long ago, appeared to me, and then I dived more into the witchy aspect. So, is there a process people can work on to help them understand that and work through that?
Oh, there definitely is, and of course, it's going to be individual for
Hmm.
everybody. Um, and and I think the first step is actually realizing how it's showing up for you, right? And and again, it's going to be very individual. So for me, for example, I as you already mentioned, I was 14 years old in 1993 when I went to my first full moon women's circle, and it was immediate remembrance of this
Mm.
ancient practice of sitting together in a circle with women around a fire. I felt home, immediately.
Mm.
And so we can have these experiences in our life where we have that immediate moment of deep remembrance, right? And then it was like things started to come into my life, books,
Mm.
different things. This was pre-internet, remember, right? So it was a different,
Yes.
the 90s. Um, and and then I remember the first time, and it was soon after that, which of course it just all makes sense that things were starting to heat up around once I was on the path, that I was reading about the witches being burned at the stake, being persecuted, and I had a
Mm.
very visceral memory come up in my body of that, and like feeling the panic and fear, like more than
Mm.
is just normal when you're reading about something. I had a very visceral reaction in my
Mm.
body, and I felt that moment of whoa, right? And what was that? And as then the years went by, it was easy for me to then look back and dismiss what I'd felt in that moment, because I thought, oh, I was just being, an overly dramatic teenager, which I was also, right? So I thought, years went by, and I thought, oh, that didn't happen, and I was out of the closet in my 20s. Like, anyone that was close to me knew that I was a witch, that I, did moon rituals. I even,
Mhm.
I taught different workshops. I was going to circles. So I thought that I was pretty out of the broom closet, right? As the expression goes. But it wasn't
Mhm.
until I started my online business back 2016, and I was reaching more people all over the world and really putting myself out there, that I had to face that again. And I had a second very profound experience in the middle of a guided journey, where once again I was brought back to that time, the burning times, and that allowed me to really acknowledge that it had happened, that I couldn't just dismiss what I'd felt as a teenager, that I really had to look at that. And in that moment, I knew that that was a big part of my message for the women that I was meant to work with. So that I just wanted to share my story about it, that it really confirmed what had happened. But, for you, who is ever listening, right? Or for you, Tia, I mean, depending, like the trigger nowadays could happen from an online comment by a religious, religious family member. Maybe it could be that fear of you not wanting to post something because who might read it, or you wouldn't want so-and-so to think that you are, turning to the dark side, or whatever the feeling is, right? Where we have these, this conditioned fear, especially from the Christian church, right? It could be a look that someone gives you when you're speaking about your beliefs, that you then interpret out of your own anxiety of thinking like, oh no, what are they going to think of me? Holding back on sharing what your own spiritual gifts. Like if you feel like, oh, I wish that I could do more of that, but I can't. Well, look at that. What is behind that? I can't. Are you afraid that actually, like, your family's going to turn against you, that you'll be rejected from your family or friends? Is there this irrational fear behind that you think that you or your loved ones will come to harm if you speak about your psychic abilities, or if you share about the plant wisdom that you know? So just the first step is to really identify how it's playing out in your life.
That is beautiful. I love that, your story and how you explain those irrational fears. And I like how you talked about the deep memories and home. And I think that's going to also resonate a lot, because one of the things I notice when I talk to people is that they get nervous about doing that, because they don't want to do something wrong. They don't want to connect with the wrong, deity, or whatever the case may be. And you said, well, it felt like home. And that's so true. Even when I was doing a spell, I remember one of the first spells I did was the knot, tying the knot with the string. It just felt normal to me. And that's before I actually looked up the knot tying. It's something that said tie the knot. So it's funny how it just comes back to you. And that's what I encourage people to do, is to look at, just as Flora was saying, those irrational fears. When you see something like, oh my gosh, if I say this, would they think I'm on the dark side? And the more research you do, just as you were saying, reading the books, it really will help you to take a few steps back and reclaim your power. And I think that's what a lot of people are trying to work through, or at least beginning to realize, is that there's a lot of power within them that just got doused. And unfortunately, we're told that, this is bad, this is horrible. And one of the things I love doing is, especially when I dive into reading a bit of the history, is finding the origin of things, like origin words. And I recently learned that aphrodisiac is named after the goddess Aphrodite. So the more
right.
I was like, what? And the other one was erotic, was named after Eros. And I'm like, oh my gosh. And when we look at it, their name is literally in the word. So I'm saying this because the more education we receive, understanding our irrational fears, and then understanding the witch path and everything that falls underneath that, we have some comebacks. We can say this isn't evil. Actually, what you don't realize is that you're already involved. You know how you say, oh, I use cinnamon, it's an aphrodisiac. Well, boom, you're honoring Aphrodite.
Yeah. That's right. Yeah, well, and witch, I believe the root word, doesn't that come from the Wicca word, and doesn't Wicca translate to wisdom? And
Yeah, wisdom, wise one, all that. Yep.
wise
Hmm.
one. Yeah, yeah, exactly. So that's beautiful. Looking at the etymology, the root of the words and the practices. That's fantastic. It's really, in when people wonder, like, how does this have any relevance today, and I just think it has complete relevance to
Hmm.
today, because we're seeing the result in in North America especially, but really all over the world. We're seeing the result of women displaced from positions of leadership.
Hmm.
you know and this is this what's happening in the world, the devastation to the environment, the violence against women, is because of the imbalance. And this was systematic. This was
Hmm.
systematically done to remove women from positions of leader, especially positions of spiritual leadership. Because when you look back in history, most recently, even the Celts, when the Romans were invading the British Isles, the Celts, there was women in positions of leadership. Queen Boudica being one of the most famous, because she led, one of the uprisings. And the Romans just thought, oh, isn't this crazy, and how barbaric?
Hmm.
Like, they have women leading, like, how strange. But you look back, and of course, pre-ancient Greek, when you look, the Sumeria and Egypt, the priestesses were on equal level with the priests. They
Hmm.
would lead the rites, they would be tending the temples, they would be serving the communities. And so patriarchy very and systematically just removed the feminine face of God slowly. Like, the goddesses had to be stripped of their power, doused of their power. I like that you use that word, just diminished. And actual women had to be removed from positions of leadership. And we're seeing the result of that. So today, now in the 21st century, women need to step up into more of their personal leadership. Right? I'm not talking
Hmm.
about, it doesn't have to be politics, it doesn't have to be business, just how you are showing up as a leader in your life. More and more women need to be sharing their voice, standing up for what we believe in, because we need to bring things back into balance. But the moment that a woman does start to step into her own leadership, she's confronted by her own relationship to power. And because
Hmm.
we've been stripped of our power for so long, and this witch wound comes up, that's why we in fact oppress ourselves internally. We hold ourselves back internally because of the patterning. And so that is why this witch wound needs to be looked at.
Yes, most definitely. And it's so interesting because and I know we talked about the irrational fears and things like that, but also I thought about the anger when
Mm.
because especially you were talking about like seeing the fires and just that whole like the burning. I think about now when I see uh injustice against women, it that enrages me beyond belief. Like I can't even explain how angry I get when I see that. Like, how dare you victimize her? How dare you say she's not qualified? Like, how dare you? So is that also part of the witch wound when we see something we get like triggered and the anger just arises? I guess because maybe we saw something in our past life and we saw the stripping happening. So do you also experience that when you work with people who are just like they just get triggered and angered when they see something like that?
Oh, yeah. Rage was one of the strongest emotions that I was feeling in my body as I, in that remembrance. It was like fear, but it was also
Mm-hmm.
rage at the injustice of it. And then behind the anger was just this deep grief, for
Mm-hmm.
what was being done and for what was
Yeah.
being lost. So yeah, that anger I think is normal, and it's not only connected to this witch wound or that, but that is the anger of millions of women being oppressed for thousands of years. That is like
Yes.
the rage of women everywhere, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, totally. So when people come to you, they want to work with you, they want to understand this. What are some of the things that you have to debunk along the ways? I know you talked about how we can subconsciously suppress some of the things and within, and that hinders our growth in a lot of ways. But is there something else that people have to get over, and is it multi-layered? I understand it's per person, case by case basis, but I'm wondering, since we talked about that collective consciousness, if there are maybe like two or three or whatever amount that is just seemingly across the board.
Yeah, absolutely. I can definitely share what I see kind of the first steps being. Um, for me anyway, this is my experience, but also in supporting a lot of other women move through this. What's really helpful in the beginning, well, I already said you need to identify it. So
Mm-hmm.
so even just having that awareness first, it's almost like, the first step of the 12-step program. Like you you have to acknowledge that there's a problem, right? That's the first
Mm-hmm.
step, like acknowledging that there's an issue there. Okay, so great. So step one is done. And then the next step for me, what really helped is to recognize that it didn't belong to me.
Mm-hmm.
The witch wound isn't mine. It belongs to all of us and none of us, right? That that this is collective to it. And depending on your own beliefs about reincarnation, past lives, present, like, is really, again, this is going to be very individual, but for me, how I think of it is that, it wasn't me 400 years ago. It wasn't Flora 400 years ago being burnt at the
Mm-hmm.
stake, but it's like a piece of consciousness that my soul remembers. And
Mm-hmm.
so that, just putting it at arm's length, realizing like, oh, this is something that is a collective fear, a collective wounding. It doesn't belong to me. Just gave it that distance. For me, it gave me that space to kind of to look at it more objectively, because it was like, oh, well, if it's not like actually mine, like it's not my wound
Mm-hmm.
only, right? Like it was like, oh, this is something that we're collectively healing. So that was just something, just having that shift was another big step in it. Just like I said, gave me some space, put it at arm's length. Didn't, that
Mm-hmm.
it doesn't belong to me. And then the third step in that is really realizing that the healing of it will take time. That we often don't know our edges, right, until we
Mm-hmm.
reach them, until we bump up against them. We don't, like I was saying, I thought that I was out of the broom closet, I was fine, the people knew me, but it was like once I started my business and I had a bigger platform, I was reaching more people, then I hit an edge of, eek, is this safe?
Yeah.
Right. And so understanding that the healing is going to take time, because it is multi-dimensional, it's like multi-timeline.
Mm-hmm.
um, and so having that, giving yourself that grace, that this is like that, this is part of the deep healing of the feminine that we're, so many of us are on the journey for, and that knowing that what is done for one is done for all. And so my healing is going to have a positive ripple effect to many people.
Yeah, so true. And I really like that because especially when you have uh at least a process, you can break it down. And the timing, I think, is huge because just like as you were saying, just when we think we're done and we go to a new level, there's a whole nother set of, fill in the blanks, worry, whatever, the witch wound, pops up again. So one thing I also noticed is that you talked about that support system, like what you were saying in 1993, you had that like sisterhood. So for people who are starting out, and I realized this over the years, is very private to some people. Some of them are still in the closet, or some of them are in a situation where they can't really be out as they would like. Maybe they got roommates and stuff like that. So what are some of the ways a witch who's semi out of the closet or completely in the closet can step into their power and really just not be discovered by muggles until they're ready and it's safe?
Yeah, I mean, I'm such a big champion for community and for sisterhood, especially. Um, and in saying that, I recognize that that's also because of the kind of person that I am. But I really do believe, like Lisa Lister, the author of Witch, says that the era of the solitary witch is over.
Mm-hmm.
No witch needs to be alone for her own safety. So if you are a solitary witch, make sure that that is actually your choice out of your joy. If you are a solitary witch because you think you need to be, or because you're maybe scared, or there's some kind of intimidation, there's probably some sister wound coming in there, maybe with meeting with other witches mingled with the witch wound. Oh yes, there's just so many wounds of the feminine that we can talk about. But just making sure that, because I mean, certainly now with the internet, it's easier than ever for find community.
Mm-hmm.
And so I always really encourage people, and that's why I have a big community, and why I love group programs and ceremonies. It's really because we are able to remember our magic, our wisdom more easily, and when more joyfully, when we have sisters as our sacred mirrors. But I think your question was, how can a witch who's not fully out of the closet come into her own power, maybe like with outside of community? Was that what you were asking? I just want to make sure.
Yeah, so it was a two-parter. Sorry, I was I guess talking too long with that. But yeah, it was a two-parter of uh basically understanding how they can maybe create a sisterhood, but they're
Ah,
still in the closet or semi in the closet, and they really can't create a sisterhood where they're at because of their giving circumstance.
right. Okay. Yeah. Well, then like the internet is definitely your ally in that. I actually do have a few, I do have a few clients who are still in the closet, like with with their families, that they don't know, but they still make it onto the group calls, and they have found that outlet for themselves where they can express who they are in that way. So it's really important for any woman on a spiritual path, even if you don't identify as a witch, and that's fine
Mhm.
too. You don't need to identify as a witch, and there's the rub. You actually don't even need to identify as a witch to still struggle with the witch wound.
Right. No, that's so true when you think about it. I was reading this was years ago, so I don't remember the exact book, but I've seen this in various articles of priestesses who practiced the sacred rite, sacred sex, and they weren't witches. They were priestesses, and they tapped into the lower chakras and things like that. And of course, that got demonized over the years. So you're absolutely right. It doesn't have to be, or you don't have to identify yourself as a witch. You can identify yourself many different ways, and that witch wound will still be there.
Hmm. Yeah, because you might be more comfortable calling yourself a healer. You might be more
Hmm.
comfortable calling yourself an intuitive, and even those skills and gifts were condemned. So So yeah, so really like find your community online at the very least, and certainly now we're still in the throes of the pandemic. Not a lot of people are meeting in person anyway, but you can at least have a community online that will support you, that you feel like you can, express yourself, that you can share what you're learning or what you're struggling with. You can ask questions, and you can really find, it's about finding your own way that you want to live, like your life being that expression of your beliefs.
Yes, and I really like when you said make sure it's your choice to be a solitary witch, because
Mhm.
uh, I know for me at least, if it's something I really want to do and is really calling me, I can't hold it in. So I can't imagine wanting to dive into that wound and work on healing and try to practice using crystals or a ritual, and you can't. So I love that you have that online community for people, so at least they can call in and join their virtual sisterhood. And I think, yeah, now more so than ever with technology, we can connect with those, fellow witches and other spiritual people. And in doing so, the growth really happens, or at least it happens faster than if we would have done it alone. And adding to that wound of, oh, now I can't be expressive. I think that is so painful when you can't be expressive.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because that's our, at least in my experience, it's our natural way of wanting to be creative, to express something, to share, right? And so when we feel cut off from that, then we're cut off from the fullness of our magic. We're cut off from the fullness of our power. Yeah, that's been my experience, and I know it's like that for you too, Tia.
Hmm. And so I'm curious, what are some of your, do you have a day-to-day ritual, a weekly ritual that helps keep you into your witchy flow? And I ask that because I know, again, like you were just saying, the pandemic and a lot of things going on. How can we maintain that so we are maintain being in our spiritual center, so that way we don't, I don't want to say revert back, but some of those old wounds don't try to creep up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so good. Well, yeah, I mean, if off the top of my head, yeah, what I do, something that I do every day is to give myself, I wouldn't say that I really meditate. That's, I mean, I'm going to be fully honest, sitting meditation totally still is still a very much a challenge for me. So I wouldn't say that I have a strong meditation practice, but I every day I give myself a few minutes of just tuning in. I tune into my body. So I do get quiet. I usually place one hand over my heart and one hand over my womb. For me, that's like, those are the centers that I really want to connect in. And I just get quiet and I tune in. And bonus points for me if I'm doing that in front of my altar. I have an altar. I have two
Mm.
altars in my home. I have one in my bedroom and I've got one in my office. And so they'll often be just giving myself that moment where I'm just listening. I'm not listening to my own mental chatter. I'm actually listening to my heart. I'm listening to my womb, right? I'm tuning in and dropping into that deeper place. And then the other thing that I really do, and I'm always encouraging, is getting outside. We've got to
Yeah.
get outside.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, we've got to get outside because, again, and this is for me, but my spiritual practice, being a witch for me is about being attuned to nature. So, like looking at just this morning, taking my son to school, I, of course, pointed out, I'm like, look at the moon. Because it's the
Mm.
waning moon, so we see the moon in the morning, right? And he's bored of that by now. He's like, yeah, whatever, mom, the moon, But
My mom's a witch. She tells me every
yeah,
time, look at the moon.
exactly. But he knows, and um and seeing what's happening in nature. How are the seasons changing? What, or what's happening? Just being outside, even if you have just a tiny balcony and you have some potted plants, or whatever it is, what's your connection to nature and just the rhythms and the cycles? Yeah.
I love, love, love that you said that. And I'm going to reference what you said earlier when I was asking how can people know if they have that wound, and you said, well, it could be as simple as you read something online as a trigger. When you said go outside, not only did that just make me so happy, it reminded me of the switch that happens when we go from being in grade school to high school,
Mm-hmm.
and not so much college. We'll put that aside because not everyone has to go to college, but the workforce, we're inside all the time. And non-smokers get punished for going out to take a break to get her fresh air. I have seen this time and time again. People have told me this. The smokers, it's okay. Someone just like, you know what? I've been working all day. I need a break. And it's so interesting because it's almost like some standard was set to keep people indoors, as opposed to saying, hey, look, we have technology. There's Wi-Fi where we work. We have benches here. Go outside, work. We trust you. You're on the premises. Nope. And so I'm saying this because, and I'm curious what you think about this. Do you believe, or do you have an inclination that something was set up in a way to make people be indoors more, to make them disconnected from nature, not liking a cycle? So many people hate winter. I've grown to appreciate winter and understanding the cycle. So many people hate Monday. So what are your thoughts about that trying to get people to disconnect from nature and disconnect from the cycles and just like hate Mondays?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. It was. I'm still really at the beginning of doing my own research about this, but we were systematically dispossessed from the land, right? Like just an example of the enclosure. I can't remember what they called them, the enclosure laws, I think it was, that came into place in England in the 1700s. Previous to that, yeah, in the medieval times, there was the feudal system. You have the lord, and you have the peasants that work the land. Like, I know, like we're still coming from a history of oppression, but even those peasants felt like, that they belong to the land, even if they didn't own the land. There's a difference, right? Mm-hmm. That was the real difference, I think. I mean, with capitalism and with patriarchy, it was like the shift from thinking that the land belongs to us, whereas previously it was we belonged to the land. Mm-hmm. Right? We belong to the earth. The earth has never belonged to us. Is a total illusion that we have like tried to think that we can own the land. And so previously you could walk anywhere. It was like all, open. Then it came the enclosures. And just even think about that, like that word, enclosed, mm-hmm. the enclosures. And then suddenly it was like, no, you're not allowed to walk on that. There's no public access to that. Mm. And so it's like keeping people just in the towns and saying you are allowed to go here, but then there's all of this land that you are not allowed to do. So being dispossessed from the land caused a huge rift in our ability to be connected to nature. And so then what did we do? We, immigrated to North America, and we did the same thing to the First Nations. We dispossessed them from the land, kill them off, give them diseases. Now we're going to say we own this land. Like, it was just how you see like the wounds passed down in generations. That's exactly what happened. And yet there was a time when all of our ancestors felt connected, felt a sense of place and belonging. All of our ancestors were indigenous to somewhere at some mm-hmm. point in time. And so part of my passion in this work of cyclic living, and teaching on that, and whether or not you call yourself a witch, it's, for me, it's grounded in connection to the earth, not only as the living body as the of the goddess, which I believe, Mother Earth, like, let's remember that, but also let's remember that we belong to the land. The land doesn't belong to us.
Very powerful. Very, very powerful.
Yeah.
I just had to take a deep breath on that one.
Yeah.
Because I relate so much to that. And I love that when my papa was alive, since I was a kid, he would take me outdoors, always the playground. We would travel, and I love traveling. I just love it. And so it's kind of breaking my heart right now, and I can't do it
Mhm.
because of the pandemic. And I encourage people to think about what you're passionate about and how that relates to the earth, because I strongly believe the more we connect with, and not just where we are currently located, but when everything's all well and good, to go to different countries as well and tap into that energy there. I'm telling you, when I go to certain places, I just get visions as if I've been there standing, waiting for something. It's just so crazy. And so I think that the more we get involved, as you were saying, with that cyclical living, really just understanding it, we can begin to heal more of our witch womb,
Mhm.
and we can really grow, flourish, remember, find our sisterhood, start that attraction, and then really live that magical life.
Exactly. I just have a big smile on my face listening to you, because that's exactly it, and that's the beautiful thing about traveling, and experiencing different cultures, different environments. And yeah, and it is sad that we're not able to do that right now. But I think there's some really big important lessons that we are meant to learn from this whole pandemic experience as well, and hopefully we're all open and humble enough to learn them.
Yes, I'm telling you, I've learned a lot. Oh my goodness. And so let's say someone worked through the witch room at the level they're at. They are beginning there to flourish. What's next for them? What do you tend to see when you work with people that happens next?
Oh, well, so with the fear gone, then yeah, then they're able to create in alignment with their unique gifts and power. They're able to express themselves, and just live a life that is a reflection of the truth of who they are. And whether it's channeling it into a business, or whether it's volunteering in your community, or whether you're homeschooling your kids, and how it, like, that's why I say how you lead your life is a very personal thing. Leadership doesn't just mean, like I said earlier, it doesn't just mean politics. It doesn't just mean
Mhm.
business. But that is what I see, that when women really look at this and they heal that, then their life becomes this beautiful creative expression. They're not held back anymore,
Mm.
right? Because they're not feeling afraid.
Man, that's so powerful. They're not held back. I'm just envisioning women wearing, you know, so-called loud colors, just having their hair the way they want to have their hair, maybe switching jobs. So I am just so thrilled that you broke this down and showing the light at the end of the tunnel.
Yeah, absolutely. And I get these messages a lot, and they're just like, wow, you're just so unashamed of who you are, and it's so inspiring, because I'm out as a witch, I'm out as a queer woman. I post photos of me and my wife and our son, and I just think, yeah, why should I have any shame of who I am? And therefore, online haters or comments or things, which still I don't even get that many, but when I do, they don't affect me, because
Mhm.
there's not a single part of me that believes I should be ashamed of who I am, or that there's anything wrong with who I am and the work that I'm doing. So when someone responds, when I'm sharing about goddesses or archetypes, and they say, uh, well, you should turn to Jesus or something, and I'm
Yeah.
just like, okay, great, that's what you think. I'm not affected by it, and so healing the triggers is the ultimate liberation.
Hmm.
Yeah.
That's beautiful. Yeah. And it's interesting. I have a joke about the you need Jesus. Actually, I'll say it first before I forget the joke. Someone wrote on Instagram, so you mean to tell me in the Middle East there was a Mark, a Matthew, a Luke, and a John in whatever BCE or whatever? Like, you know what? Yeah, I never thought about that. Like, was that their real name? I don't think so. I don't know. So when people say stuff like that, I'm like, you got to taste some things with a grain of salt, people. Don't hold some things so hard. And I don't know how accurate that is, but I just thought it was funny because it's almost like, like poking, like, hey guys, like loosen up a little bit, let people live. So that was that. But I also love that you are unapologetic. And it really hurts my heart when people can't do that, when people want to live their truth. That's why I'm such a proponent of that, whatever that looks like for them. For example, I watched a Netflix documentary, oh gosh, probably like 3 or 4 years ago now, and it was about people who came out of the closet after they were 60. So these were people who were really like 65, 70, 75 years old. And it was society caused them to have them, not even, I'm not even gonna say it's a part of life, it's who they are hidden.
Yeah.
And it was just so like, it just that bothered me, like just as you were saying earlier, Flora wasn't around 3,000 years ago, but it's that collective. And I'm just thinking, wow, all those years that you had to hide yourself just so you could be accepted and get a job. And one guy was in the Navy. One woman, in some ways, she met a guy who he was gay, and like they just like confessed to each other, and they was like, oh, that's great. We got the marriage as a cover. I'm like, that's a shame. It shouldn't be that way,
That's right.
so kudos to you for just saying, like, haters on social media, have a good day, but I am happy. I'm doing good in the world, and this is me. And we need more people like that. I was just thinking about that also because women who are just showing up more, and some people are just like, oh, she's like really raunchy, or and I'm thinking, even just talking about the goddesses a little bit, not all goddesses are nice, and some of them are, we came here to destroy and shake things up. And so we have all these different aspects of us, but yet there's so much being put on us to be, and I get it, but I can't stand this, ladylike.
Yeah.
That phrase pisses me
Yeah, exactly. Because it's just another box to
off.
try to stuff us in, and that's it. Even with my work with the archetypes, you I remember when I was realizing the inherent patriarchy even in our beloved maiden mother crone archetypes. It's like these are the acceptable roles for women.
Hmm.
um, the maiden of the eligible, young, bride to be, the mother,
Hmm.
or the crone as like the grandmother once you've done your duty, and realizing, oh yeah, we are expanding beyond that, because those 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 roles are so limiting, and they don't define us in the 21st century as women anymore. And that's part of the reason why the archetypal system that I work with, the quiz that you have, that you mentioned earlier, which of the 7 sacred feminine archetypes are you? Because I've expanded them into 7, because we have so many more options now. So it's like, yes, if you want to be the wild woman, be the wild woman. If that's who you are, if you are a healer, if you are a priestess, we have more. Archetypes are evolutionary in nature, and we're certainly seeing that because we have more freedom than ever before.
Absolutely. And that's one of the main reasons why I tell people, the term virgin does not mean you never had sex. Like when you go look at the actual meaning, that's nah, that's the patriarchy. Mother, you can give birth to a business. I don't care if you want to be a dog mom. Some people get offended with that. I'm like, let people live. I mean, I understand it because some people are like, oh well, I'm just like, let the lady, let the woman, let the person live. And the same thing with the crone. You don't have to be an old woman. You can be that older, wiser woman, but I also associate that as someone who's been around the block. They're just wiser for an experience. So I really, really like that you broke that down. I can't wait to finish your quiz. And that you had those seven archetypes. It's so important because and again going back to my love for words and origin of words is that more than ever right now we need to really understand how we are defining these words for ourselves. You know, for one moment, screw Webster's dictionary and the Oxford dictionary. What is your definition of success, of wealth? What does love look like to you? You know, and let's start giving them new definitions that are catered to us.
Yes. Yes. Yeah, because success for me means being fully soul expressed.
Mm.
That's my definition. What would be your definition of success?
My definition of success would be happy at what you're doing. You're helping others, seeing them soar, and at the end of the day, you feel satisfied. Whatever that is, you whatever what whatever you set out to do, and I don't care if you do 20% of it, 100% of it, you working towards something. And if you can go home at the end of the day, satisfied about your productivity, satisfied about you just showing up. And I'm putting that in there because especially now, you know, sometimes you just got to show up. Then this craziness going on. That's my definition of success. If I can go to sleep at night, satisfied what I did throughout the day, satisfied that I spoke up, satisfied with myself, I think that's success.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And I love that for you, service, helping others is part of your definition of success. And yeah, going to bed at night and knowing that 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 you were in integrity with who you are and what
Yeah.
you believe. So that's
Yeah.
absolutely it. So I love that we do need to redefine these words for ourselves, and especially the sticky ones like authority and power and leadership. Seeing we have to reprogram ourselves
Yeah.
to be able to see women in those
Mhm.
roles, to see ourselves in those roles, and to
Mhm.
realize that there's a new way.
Yeah.
Authority and the power and the leadership that we've seen that's oppressive and manipulative and greed, all of that. It's like, hey, that's the shadow side of that. What is the highest possible outcome with that, and can we redefine it? So it's so important what you're talking about, Tia.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So any final words and anything you want to let the listeners know, any upcoming events, how they can reach out to you directly?
Yeah, well, yeah, definitely. If this is something that you are resonating with, I encourage you, take my archetype quiz. That's all very interesting information about who you are in terms of that archetypal lens. Connect with me on Instagram if you want to connect more. That would be great. This conversation has just been wonderful, and I mean, I don't know. Final thoughts. I guess what I do want to say is that there is a lot of courage in healing this witch wound. It does require a lot of courage, and there's also there's also a level of responsibility for yourself in what you're calling in. If you're ready to call yourself a witch, that there is a history of pain and trauma there. So having that awareness, then you realize the responsibility that you're taking on with that, and also to understand what it will trigger, like in yourself, as you're healing on this path, what it will trigger in others, and doing it from a place that's compassionate, and also that it's coming from your truth. I guess that's just where I'm wanting to say, it's not calling yourself a witch just because it's trendy right now, or, you know, that it's about, like, you know, the trinkets and the things. That's not what it's about. Really be clear on that for yourself as you're, you know, as you're facing into healing this.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah. Thank you. I'm glad that you said that too about, you know, the whole trendy situation, because this really involves a lot of research, a lot of reading, to really understand, because those emotions do flow. They flow and flow. So, you know, hopping on it because it's, you know, a little bit trendy, that's not going to help at all. So thank you for that. What a lovely conversation. I feel a sense of relief already. Already. Wow. Thank you. I really appreciate this. Thank you so much.
You're so welcome, and thank you for the light work that you are doing in the world.
Hmm. So, listeners, I am sending you so many blessings. I am rooting for you as always. Remember to be kind to yourself. Until next time. As always, Spiritual Trailblazer, thank you for tuning in. Do make sure to stop by and visit me at tiamariejohnson.com. Also, don't forget to subscribe. Last but not least, be kind to yourself. I'm rooting for you, and I'm sending you so many blessings. Until next time.